there's a lot about the Earth that we don't know, and a lot about the Earth that's anomalous and unexplainable. And there are a lot of people who think the Earth is not at all, as we generally believe, solid, but actually hollow inside. Can you talk about that?
I've always felt that this would be a logical explanation. The aurora borealis, for instance, where does it come from? If there's not some sort of an inner light, or I don't want to really call it a sun, but some sort of an inner furnace in there that can come out. My philosophy has always been, where there's so much smoke, there must be fire. I got very interested in this subject because it always felt right to me. And I started doing research on it, and I found that there has been so much talk about an inner Earth in every single civilization for thousands and thousands of years back. And then I began meeting people who said that they saw some of the little inner Earth beings, and that some of them were blue. And as soon as I heard about the little blue inner Earth beings, I said, that must be have to do with Krishna, because I always wondered why Krishna was always shown as blue. And so I started looking in especially to Krishna, and they said he came from within the earth. And this kind of led me to a lot of other research, and I just found this very fascinating. I spent a couple of years of just researching constantly, and in every civilization there's something about the inner earth. And I finally drew up all of the different research into book form and presented this book, Quest for the Inner Earth. And in this book, I'm theorizing. I don't come to definite pronouncements that this is the way it is, or that this is cut and dried or anything, but I'm giving people a lot of thought-provoking things to think about, a lot of possibilities, and a lot of things that seem very logical. I collected some pictures, a lot of epic poems that have been written, and then I interviewed some people who had had actual experiences, either through meditation or otherwise, and I just found it a very, very interesting subject. And then to top it all off, there are several channels who claim to channel beings from there. And at one point in my life, when I was going to some of the energy points and vortexes, I went up on Mount Shasta, spent time there, and I was in a deep meditation, and I was taken inside somehow to a city that was inside of Mount Shasta, and it just blew my mind. I was very fascinated with that, and I wasn't taken down deep into the Middle Earth or anything like that, but the references made during that little meditative experiences alluded to there being much, much more. This was just a little entry. And so with that in mind, it just has become a very real possibility. And in some of these channelings, I hear people say that there are different things that may be happening on the surface of the earth, and that our good space brothers, divine space brothers, are standing by in their UFO to, as it were, beam people up to save them in case the planet is on fire or nuclear or whatever may happen. I don't like to get into the negative. And we've all known about that, the liftoffs or whatever. But also the channelings are saying that the little inner earth beings are coming out to check out the surface, and they are preparing to take a lot of us inside the earth. And this won't be the first time, because the Hopi Indians, for instance, tell very detailed stories of how when the earth was in problems on the surface, they were taken down through the Grand Canyon and into the inner earth, and they called the little beings that guided them there the ant people. And they said they looked like little praying mantis beings, kind of like what we might talk about, the little grays. And then they brought them back up when the surface was clear. So I know that the Divine Ones are looking out for us. They're not going to let us, the humanity, perish with the planet. And so no matter what happens on the planet, we will either be lifted up, taken inside, or something will happen to us. And I think the inner earth is going to play a great part at this time. And I was so enthused after doing so much research about the inner earth that I kept getting little inspirational thoughts of writing a fiction story. And I hadn't written any fiction. I usually keep everything to research. But I wrote this second book, Elysian Visits the Inner Earth. And I thought it would be interesting to people to actually take a lot of the research that I had gleaned and put it into story form to where they could actually follow it and experience some of the things that the story actually talks about. And I placed the setting of this in Switzerland, and I have the main character as a little albino girl who, when the inhabitants there of Switzerland were moving from one area to another during a storm, or before a storm, and it was very, very sultry and hot, that this little albino girl, albinos are not supposed to be in the hot sun, they cannot take heat, and this albino girl passed out. And in research with doctors, when an albino can pass out, you can't feel a heartbeat, you think they're dead. And they presumed this little girl was dead on this trip where they were going over a mountain, over to a better farmland. And because they were in a hurry, they had to beat the storm. They couldn't spend much time. They didn't have time for a Christian burial. They were also on a highly rocky mountainous plain. And so they just placed the little girl that they thought was dead under a tree and covered her with leaves. And then some beings from the inner earth who make pilgrimages each spring to gather different herbs came by and saw this little girl, and they could more or less see by the tracks of the wagons and such, and knowing about the storm, that she was left there, and nobody would be coming back for her. So they took her home with them to the inner earth and raised her. And as she grew, she at one point became curious about where she might have been from. So she leaves and strives to find her family. So it's quite an interesting love story, and how she meets people here and on the surface, and then eventually takes her loved one back to the inner earth for a blessing. So it's all based on my research. It's got lots and lots of mystical things, as all my books, even my fictions, have a lot of mystical, spiritual things. And this book, I feel, would make an excellent movie, something like Steven Spielberg would be interested in, or Stephen Simon, or some of these that are doing the more metaphysical type movies. And I see this as a movie. I perceive this on a psychic level that it will be. And also a book that I wrote about my grandson, and Indigo struggles to overcome drugs. All the things that he had to do, and the spiritual things that he went through that helped him. I feel that this will make an excellent movie. And then another fiction that I wrote, this was not a fiction, this was based on my grandson. This one was based on my sister, coming full circle. It's one of the most touching love stories and things that she went through. Would make a tremendous movie with all her bands that she formed and musical things. And then I have a fourth book that I've been guided to try to get made into a movie. It's called The Gypsies at Secret Lake.